Hey guys, we have another episode of the Sovereign Entrepreneur podcast here. As always, have my co-host Danny.
What's
and
up,
then
guys?
Very special guest, my friend Jack Liang. We
What's up,
met
everyone?
through mutual friends like 2 months ago, and I knew, no joke, within a minute of talking to this guy that one, we were going to be friends, but two, like he had this like very spiritual and positive energy that I wanted to learn more into and tap into. And we just had a conversation on Friday, which is like our first like long form conversation, and it was super interesting. And honestly, I think if we just have a repeat of that conversation, it'll be great content.
Yeah.
But would love to kind of get your background and just we could dive into any topic from there.
Yeah, and when I met Rob, he just was like able to speak at so many different things that I've done, and I was just so impressed at like how well researched he was. I was like, holy shit, he knows about plants, he knows about Buddhism, he knows about entrepreneurship. Like, who is this guy? You know?
He knows everything.
Yeah, he knows a lot of shit. So, yeah, background. Yeah, I was a son of immigrants. My parents immigrated here in their 30s. And it was because of the one-child policy back then in China. I was the second child, and they came here so that we can have like a better life experience, right? More opportunities. Yeah, I grew up in a house that had 14 people in a 4-bedroom and a basement in Brooklyn, New York. Shared a bedroom with my sister and my grandpa up until I was like 13.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Damn.
I was this tall when I was 12, so it was just like, yeah. And for a long time, I thought the whole world was like Brooklyn. Like, there's nothing else like this, right? This is the world. And obviously, as I got older and started traveling, I was like, oh, the whole world is not like New York. Yeah, I got involved in a lot of gang stuff when I was a kid. I was always seeking protection, looking for like essentially communities to walk with me, to associate my brand with, because I needed to survive, right? So I was playing basketball, I was on the track team, I was doing graffiti all over the place. And yeah, my life started to pivot when my older cousin, he was arrested for armed robbery, and they put him away for like 7 years, from like 20 to 27. And I was having a dim sum with his mom, and I just saw her breaking down crying, and I was just like, holy fuck, like I don't want me to cause that reaction for my mother, right? And I was like, okay, I gotta find a different trajectory. Started working hard, got into community college because no other college would accept me, and then transferred to NYU. Started meeting international folks, started hustling, promoting parties, working all these internships, found myself at Goldman Sachs, interning Coca-Cola. Left, I graduated, and I opened my first restaurant when I was like 24.
Wow.
That restaurant was the 11th highest grossing restaurant for all Square customers at
It was
the
like
time.
fast casual.
Fast
what?
casual poke. It was
Poke.
poke.
Wow.
And you were early to the poke trend,
Yeah,
right?
we're the third poke restaurant. We just saw like they opened this first poke restaurant in Midtown, and like by a strip club in the corner, in like the middle of a block, which is in a great area. And we're like, we should get like a prime location. Did that.
How did you
Eventually-
fund that?
Yeah, so it was interesting. I had like $10,000 in my bank account, and the project cost 350, bootstrapping.
A little bit of a delta there.
Yeah, a little bit. And there was two other partners, and for me it was like first using that 10K to like get another 10K from a friend. Then the friend gave me 10K. He was a good friend. He ended up working in private equity after college, but during college he didn't have much, and I was like buying him food and like paying for his dues and shit, and he really returned the favor. So I borrowed some money from him. Then I went to open a credit card, got like 50K approved on the credit card. So now I'm like at 70.
Oh man, you were like fully risk on.
Yeah, I was ready. I was
Like
ready
you,
to risk it
if
all.
that didn't work out, you're going bankrupt.
Yeah.
Oh sure. Yeah.
Wow.
But I was just like, it was kind of ignorance, right? It was just like, well, I just really believed in, one, the concept, and two, in myself, and able to like promoting the shit out of this thing, and it worked. Right, from that one restaurant, we opened 7 restaurants in 2
Wow.
years.
All under that poke brand, or did you do
Three
different brands?
So we had 4 under the poke brand, and then one different concepts. So one was a Vietnamese, it was croissant banh mi in Houston. I had a cafe, and I had like this hot dog truck also in Texas. It was random, but
I bet that printed money, dude.
it was good. We went to these events,
Yeah.
and it was like, oh, 20K at a fucking event, and these people were just working their ass off in the heat, and I was so impressed with them, and I was like, okay, like I want to help.
Yeah, and the overhead is non-existent, right?
No,
You just have like a mobile truck.
Mobile truck.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of work. It's like going to the event. You got to be willing to like work in the heat, and you know, at that point, I was more.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, yeah. In Houston, it's hot.
Yeah.
You know. Then small businesses were a thing. A lot of tech companies were reaching out. Uber Eats, Square, they wanted to meet. The product teams wanted to meet. And Meta specifically was like, how are you able to attract so many people to your stores? I think I had this one ad that I put like $50 on. I must have gotten like 100,000 impressions. And I was like, oh, you don't know what I'm doing? They're like, no. And I'm like, let me show you. And I was in.
That's incredibly cheap. It was like
insane.
$500 CPMs. Like in today's environment, the cost per eyeballs have just like skyrocketed recently. And so like even getting a $30 CPM defined as the cost per thousand
views,
eyeballs is pretty good, right?
Insane.
Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic.
yeah,
I'm sure you got a lot of revenue out of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it brought, I mean, I think that first day we did like, we didn't operate it that well. I don't remember. It was like $5,000 that first day, but like that first, like we made our full return in 3 months.
I mean, that was probably the best $50 you've ever spent from like an ROI standpoint, because you got all of that revenue, but then there was like the secondary and downstream effects. Like those people like your restaurant, then they tell their friends and family, and you get Google reviews.
They see
and
the
just
line.
being part of the consciousness of that area, right?
Yeah. Also at that time, Pokemon Go just came out.
Oh,
and
Oh, I remember that at NYU
Yeah.
Union
Yeah.
Square, like people
Yeah.
at Union Square just like running around.
running around getting Pokemons, and like we also got like some sort of side traffic from that. Yeah, it was great. And yeah, so I was teaching Meta how to run these ads, and like the specific timing was the most important thing, right? Like, because I was promoting parties, I knew how to run ads from the parties, right? And interesting is like a lot of these engineers at Meta don't actually use the product, and I was like, kind of caught me off guard. And then they asked me to come in and work with them on the Instagram promote button specifically, and becoming a startup advisor for Meta.
And this was in the early days of Instagram, right?
Yeah.
So like Kevin Systrom was still involved
He
with the
was still there,
company.
yeah.
And when did they found, and then when did they get acquired by Facebook, if you recall?
I don't remember.
Yeah. I just remember like Instagram had like 10 people and they did $1 billion acquisition.
Yeah,
that was like
that
the
was
big
very
story of the
impressive.
time. And everyone was like, yeah, Mark Zuckerberg like overpaid for this company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing with
And they said the
WhatsApp,
same
right?
thing about
Greatest
Oculus.
deal
They
on
said
the
the same
planet.
thing about WhatsApp.
Yeah.
All these like seemingly crazy acquisitions. He just happens to be 10 years into the future, right?
Yeah.
He realizes that WhatsApp, he's not going to make much revenue on it, but he's going to control the global discourse. I run my entire companies on WhatsApp, right?
Same.
It's crazy.
Yeah. YouTube also bought for $1 billion
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
that time.
Yeah.
I met the founder.
yeah.
Steve. Yeah.
And then like someone tried to buy Facebook for $1 billion. I forget who
Yahoo.
it was.
Yahoo.
Yeah.
Imagine if Yahoo had bought Facebook. And like even the venture capitalists, like I think Peter Thiel was in Mark Zuckerberg's camp, but there were certainly venture capitalists on the cap table
Right.
of Facebook that were like, you should take this money.
Yeah.
Right.
All
And
of
having the
them.
foresight to be like,
Yeah.
fuck it, I'm just
All
gonna
of
go
them.
for it.
Well,
Yeah.
Zuck was like, I kind of like this, and if I'm gonna sell it, I'm just gonna do this again.
Yeah.
So why not just keep it?
Well, that's the thing too. And then there was also Spiegel, who you know,
Yeah.
with Snapchat. Facebook offered $1 billion. He's like, no, fuck
I think
that.
they offered them a little bit more.
Well, Spiegel also had he's from a very wealthy background, and so like the risk of him not taking that is like was pretty non-existent. But even when people are like, oh, like why don't you just sell your company in a couple of years? I'm like, okay, what actually happens when you sell a company? You get an infusion of cash into your bank account, and then it becomes a problem. Like, where am I going to put that money?
Right.
Or should I just invest that money into my company, right? And because that's going to be the highest returning investment, rather than putting that money into the stock market and competing for 20% returns with Wall Street, when you
you
can
have no
invest in
control.
yourself and get 1,000% return. You know?
And it's also personal growth too, right? So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
Investing in
biggest
networking,
ROI
yeah.
on that money is the
Yeah.
personal growth.
I think so.
Well, his
For
network
sure.
is immense, and I'm interested
Yeah.
to to hear the backstory with that. But even like you put yourself through NYU, Like
Yeah,
NYU is one
yeah.
of the most expensive city.
Did a lot of weird things, man. I was promoting parties. I was like up 5 days a week getting these text messages from people who were like flying in trying to go to a party. And at that time, it was like any girl over 6 foot, you would get paid like $100. So I would like partner with the modeling agencies.
Right.
And then like people would get table service. And then now I'm getting commission. And then now I'm like renting out the whole venue. I put a down payment on the venue on these small restaurants and bars that are vacant. And first I would do like a door deal where I would keep all the door fees. And then I started doing bar deals because, you know, eventually it came like 21, right? And I would buy out the place for like $20K for the night, and anything I made on top of that I would keep. So, you know, we were talking about some nights were like $150K for like a Halloween or a Christmas or a New Year's, and you know, that was nice.
Right, and there was the monetary benefit. You made the spread on the revenue versus your cost, but then you also like develop a pretty big network of wealthy people,
Huge,
right,
without
that own
even
these
realizing
venues.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the people that are attracted to the events. I mean, this is where you met Andrew Yang. I don't want
Yeah.
to steal your thunder on that story, but
Yeah.
that's a great one.
Yeah. You want me to talk about meeting Andrew? Or
Yeah, I mean, do you want to like get
Yeah.
into like, well, one, like, when did you graduate? Like, when did the next chapter start after the restaurants? And like, did you exit those, or did you sell them
Yeah.
to a business partner?
I sold some of my shares to the investors when I was essentially when I got the job at Instagram. First, we brought in a store manager to manage most of the stores, and then I was pretty much like off of it. I still have some equity in a few restaurants right
Nice.
now. One's actually down here, and one's in New York.
But you're completely passive. At this
Yeah,
point.
I'm like, you know, I don't even really like to talk about it because I was doing that since like 2016, right? Now it's like, it's been 8 years. It's kind of like a thing I've done. It's not something I'm continuously doing. And the reason behind doing those restaurants was more of like proving to myself and others that like I can do this.
Right.
And I'm good on that.
I mean, it's a remarkable story because like the restaurant business is notorious for being one of the
Brutal.
hardest.
It is
like
brutal.
the statistics on them failing is just obscene, and the fact that you're able to do that at 24 years old is
Brutal.
incredible.
It was brutal. And I wasn't like the most functional person. I was still drinking. I was still
Right.
smoking. I was still partying. And
Reminds me of that show, The Bear.
yeah, literally. And then like I had video, like sometimes I would look on my cameras and people were like fighting, like my own staff were like fighting downstairs, like fist fighting.
I can't watch that show; it gives me
Yeah.
too much anxiety. But like I can imagine like that is what your restaurant was looking like.
Yeah, it was interesting, you know. But yeah, so I went from working, and then I started working at Instagram, realizing mainly that I had an issue, which was mentally I wasn't as developed, emotionally I wasn't as developed, because I didn't know how to have challenging conversations with my business partners, and I was like, you know, I don't want this to escalate if I, you know, confront someone or say something that I don't mean. And two, I had a girlfriend at that time who was living with me, and she pointed out the fact that I had anger issues. And I was like, what do you mean anger issues? Like, well, you know, one, you get into a lot of fights. I'm like, well, that's just culture here, right? It's just, and she was like, well, one time when we were arguing and your mom had heart surgery and you went to pick her up, you couldn't drop that emotion, even like in front of your mom after she came out of surgery. And, you know, because of that, she was worried about you, even though she just came out of, you know, this operation. And at first I didn't get it. And then eventually I was really grateful for her because I was like, damn, that's tangible, right? That's proof. That's I don't know how to let go of my shit. Like I hold on to grudges. And so when I got the opportunity at Meta, they gave me free therapy. I started doing it. And then they were like, you should do meditation. I met this guy named Young Pueblo. Have you seen him on Instagram?
Yeah.
No.
He's an author and stuff now. Yeah.
Sick, bro.
Yeah.
He's also in venture. And,
So did you actually like meet him
yeah,
in real
met
life?
him.
Okay.
He came
Okay.
to speak, and like, bro, like 10 people were there.
Wow.
And I was sitting at the front, just like, what is this guy? How does he create these poems? And I think his following is in the millions now. But now, at the time, he was like 300K. And he was just sitting there exuding this peace. And I was like, how do you do it? He's like, I meditate. And then I was like, okay, maybe this rich guy has time to meditate. I was like, you know, where are you from? He's like, dude, I used to be a drug addict, and I'm from the Bronx. So I was like, wow, Mexican drug addict from the Bronx can exude this much peace. Like, what's my excuse? I have none, right? So you start on YouTube, 10 minutes a day, just meditate. Did it. Then I started doing all this other, I started realizing there's all these other potentials in meditation, and then finding peace in myself. And that started to rewire this internal operating system from like needing to prove myself, from doing things out of fear and just like feeling unworthy, to like, okay, I'm only doing things that align with who I am. I'm only going to be around people who I like. I don't care how much money they have.
Yeah, and like chronologically, just like opining on what you just said. So one, I think you were talking about your inability to have difficult conversations, but there's this entire camp of thinking that like basically your success in life is a function of how many difficult conversations you're able to have and do it comfortably, and going into them saying like this is an opportunity for growth as opposed to this being an uncomfortable experience. And then what you're saying about like, you know, with your mom coming out of surgery and then like you bringing that anger in that conversation, you had that choice at that time, right? You have one of two choices. One, you could say, I can't change myself and this is who I am and I'm always going to be an angry person. Or you say like, I can change, right?
Yeah, or I want to change,
right?
Yeah.
And like you actually took steps instead of saying, yeah, I want to change. And then like 5 minutes later, you get distracted by something and you fly into a fury again.
Yeah.
Or you're like, I'm going to take action.
Yeah, and it's brutal to be going through such a reflective process, right? Because your friends don't understand you. They're like, what do you mean you're meditating? Or what do you mean you're not drinking anymore? And what do you mean you don't want to party with us anymore? And it's like that like social pressure to stay consistent with who you are is the thing that actually makes you consistent with who you are.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck that. I really don't want to be like this old version of myself. And it just like takes like, you're almost like pulling yourself out of it. Right. And then you see the progress. You're like, oh, I'm not angry anymore. Oh, I don't have anxiety. And and then these little wins, they're like, oh, what is it from? Oh, it's from meditation. Or it's from
And when you
therapy.
like enter new chapters of your life, like I've gone through this, like I have friends that are going through it right now actually, like when they scrap things from their existence, whether it's alcohol or drugs or like anything like that, when they choose therapy, when they choose meditation, you start to see who your real friends are.
Yeah. And like, that's something I realize in myself is like, I'm always trying to give permission for other people to show up differently. So when I meet them, I'm like, you know, who are you now? What are you working on now? Because I don't want to just pressure them into being that same old person. Because if I do that to them, then I'm doing that to myself, right? So I'm like, hey, you know, anything you do, you want to post something different, you want to dress a different way, try it. Like, go fuck it up. Run
It sounds like you have a lot more like grace for other people, right? You let people be themselves really because you learned how to be yourself also. And it's so funny that you talk about this because this is, well, it's something Hormozy says too. And I realized this too during when I got sober, and in any growth phase, it's not just like sobriety, right? It's like starting to have the discipline to like stay home and work all the time, right? In order to make something you're trying to build successful. It's like you start losing all those people. You do learn who your real friends are because those real friends understand and they like root for you in that place, right? And they're like, that's cool, dude, no worries. Like, we'll see you when we see you type thing. But it's the loneliest time. And this is the Hormozy quote, because like you're no longer friends with who you were friends with, but like you're not at the place yet where you get to be friends with the people that you want to be friends with, right? Like, so it's this very like, it's like limbo, right? It's like purgatory.
Well, you're just a different person, right? It's like you were a prior version of yourself and you befriended those people because you had commonalities, but like if you didn't know those people and you're that new person, would you be befriending them? And like the answer might be no, right? Because you're a different person.
So I like, and like you said, just like every ounce of strength and will, especially in a society like we live in now, is different 50 years ago when you didn't have social media and all the pressures and the massive FOMO. But it's like, exactly. But it's like literally like, you can visualize it of like, you know, you're shackled and you're like trying to just break out of the shackles with every ounce of energy and strength you have, and to not give in to that pressure, because it's so much easier to be like, all right, I'll just come out tonight. Like, all right, I'll do that. And every day you do that just keeps you that much further and further away from like accomplishing what you're trying to accomplish, right?
Yeah, I think it was like 75% of Americans, they live within 5 miles of where they grew up.
Yep.
It just never change. And the world is so big. Like,
Yep.
go see something. Go do something else. You know.
Yeah.
Go live somewhere and see what happens.
Yeah. So what did you start once you got the job with Meta, right? Had you traveled before and you kind of so you didn't know how big the world was until you
I've been to like China twice just to see my grandparents, and like one time I went to Dubai because the flight was like 200. It was like a glitch, it was
Right.
a glitch, you know. But no, not to the extent of like living on the road, having one suitcase,
Right.
and just making it all work.
Right.
And yeah, in 22 to 23, I was on 90 flights.
Wow.
Kind of like your experience,
Wow.
just like always 1 week.
Living out of a
Yeah,
suitcase.
suitcase.
It's so fun, though,
Yeah,
man.
if the thing didn't fit in the suitcase, I wouldn't buy it.
Right.
That was my rule, and that's a good rule.
You have one of those like nomad backpacks? Or
Yeah.
what? Yeah, I
Yeah,
rolled
yeah.
around like that for a
It's
year.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything in there.
Put everything in there.
Your entire existence.
Yeah.
And like if you need to re-up in certain areas if you're going to stay there for a medium term period of time.
buy it.
But like if it doesn't fit, you just throw it out
That's it.
at the end of the trip.
That's it.
What role does gratitude play in your life and how has it impacted you? And like what's your practice for gratitude?
I feel like when I'm grateful, like more good things come in my life.
Yeah, it manifests positive energy.
Yeah, they're just matching that frequency, right? Of being like recognizing first of all the little things that happen in my life. Like, oh, met these guys today. Like we talked about this specific thing. And then getting really detailed into like, oh, there was a butterfly in my stoop today, and that was really pretty, right? So then you wire your brain to start paying attention to all the little things. And it takes just listing out at least 3 things you're grateful for a day.
Yeah, it's like the daily synchronicities, right? And
Yeah.
like you're grateful for them. They're positive things, and like they're signs from the universe that you're on the right path. This is Joe Dispenza that we were just talking about, right? Like when you're gratitude, you're saying, "Thank you, universe. I
Yeah.
really appreciate that, but I'm also ready for more."
Yeah.
And then it flows.
If God was a person, right, and he gave you something and you didn't appreciate it, would that person want to give you
Interesting.
more things? Like,
That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, it
you
really
know,
is.
or even your temple, even your body, right? Like,
Yep.
would God want to hang out with you if you're unappreciative? I'm sure he'll still love you like a parent, but like, is he gonna be like, let me chill with Rob? Like,
No.
maybe, right? Or if you don't take care of your body, if you're putting
Yeah.
in junk, like, and spirit wants to come inside you and be like, let me chill with this guy for a
Yeah.
day, like, okay, maybe I'm out of here.
Yeah.
This stinks.
It's toxic.
It's toxic.
Yeah.
It's destroying itself. Let me get up out of here.
Yeah.
So that's how you see it.
So how'd you graduate from throwing parties to throwing the biggest movement
Yeah.
event for during COVID?
Yeah. So, Steve Jobs, I read his book. I'm sure.
Walter
you know,
Isaacson.
Yeah.
It's a great one.
Talks about like he learned topography and didn't know why. Like he dropped out of college to learn topography, and then a decade later, that design was implemented into
Yeah.
the Mac, and that was like a big deal. So I was like throwing these parties and not really knowing why I was doing it. I was like, why the fuck did I waste my time throwing parties? Well, I made money from it, but and then here this situation is happening where Asian Americans are getting attacked for whatever reason.
This is after BLM.
This is after BLM. This was mainly, I mean, they attribute it to COVID, but like it was just pent up racism and anger and all these things, and it helped me really dive into like why racism happens and understanding racism in myself, like my own racism, right? And but yeah, I realized when I was thinking about organizing a rally, as I was scrolling down my list of contacts to who to enroll and onboard to do this for me, because we're entrepreneurs, we're trying to like get people to help us, and I went all the way down my contacts list, and it was like, no, fool, you do it. Who else is gonna do it? Like, who else? This is the most important thing right now. Like, who else is gonna organize? Is gonna bring peace? Is not gonna bring chaos? Can get enough people behind it? Like, who's gonna do that job? Like, no, you do it. And I was actually at Joe Dispenza retreat, just like
Interesting.
asking for a download on what I should be doing. And I got the vision every day while I'm at this meditation retreat for like 5 days straight. Plan this rally, here's where it's gonna be, get it done. And I didn't want to do it because it's just a lot of work. I was still working at Instagram at that time. And I just felt like when there's a sign, you got to follow
Yeah.
it when it's that clear. You know, when you ask for a sign and it's that clear, you're just like, okay, let me follow through. And one day after another, I flew back, I started planning, I started getting people involved. A lot of people said no to helping because all the rallies that they saw were on TV, like destroying stores and stuff. And they're like, no, we don't want to be a part of that. Also, a lot of these people knew me from my past. So they're like, oh, I know you're angry, Jack, but like, we don't think beating up people is the right thing. And I'm like, oh, like what? Like, I forgot that like you haven't met
Right.
me, you know, since my meditation practice. And they're
Right.
like, I'm like, this is about being in
Bro, I'm
community.
enlightened now, man.
Well, it's not about enlightened. It's just like I'm not angry anymore. I'm not gonna go out and hurt people. Like this is about
That's hilarious.
being seen and,
Yeah.
and celebration and like helping people let go of their fear because they haven't been outside and yeah, just planning and setting things up and one thing after another. 10,000 people show up, and it was at that time the largest Asian American rally in history.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and it spearheaded. What it did was, like me doing it and breaking that ceiling, because what I identified was that the current people that were organizing, I didn't align with, like these people in their 50s who were like Asian parents, and I'm like, I'm not gonna show up to that. Or these other people who are like, fuck the police. I'm like, I don't really align with that either.
Yep.
But let me do something that I align with. That's like kind of like a music show. I brought out MC Jin, right? Like I brought out these lion dancers, right? I led a meditation at the end. It was an experience.
Wow.
Right. And the rally was called Rally Against Hate, but what my intention was for people to have a cathartic release, to come here and chant and scream and express themselves, and then go home with that like clear energy to their families, right? And be like, oh. And people who didn't show up to that, they were like, I missed out, like a festival. They felt like they
Right.
didn't go to something amazing. You
Right.
know? And the people who did go to it was like, wow, like that was dope. Like, could you believe that these people came, that Andrew Yang came, that Schumer came out, and all these.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. So you know Chuck Schumer as well?
Yeah, he came out. All these other politicians came out. The Brooklyn Borough president came out. Like everyone was there, right?
Yeah.
AOC?
She wasn't there. Okay. but a lot of people
That's
were
lucky
there.
for you.
Yeah. Rihanna came out to one of my rallies.
Okay.
Dang.
That was sick.
Wow.
That was sick. I planned a rally in Times Square, and I did it. This one, I did it in 3 days, and this was when I believed like there was a bigger power out there, because like I was looking for a sign, and I was like, give me a sign. And I saw a post on Instagram that had like 3 likes that said "Stop Asian Hate on Times Square," and my foolishness told me like that billboard was going to be there forever for like at least a week or something. I was like, okay, we got to do a rally there, because there was this woman who was attacked in Times Square, and like Times Square is a mecca, and like if we take over Times Square, that would be a bigger statement to people who weren't Asian and who didn't know what was happening.
Do you just spontaneously show up? Do you even alert the police or anything like that?
Spontaneous, took it over.
How did the police react to that?
They were cool.
Okay.
They were cool. I knew some people in the police department. They would reach out to me, and they'd be like, anyway.
Why are you causing a ruckus, Jack?
Yeah, no, they were cool. They didn't understand, but they were going through their own shit, so they didn't really care about me as much. But essentially, I planned this rally on a Thursday for a Sunday, which was Easter Sunday. So it was like 3 days. Getting New Yorkers to Times Square is like really difficult.
Yeah, no
it's
one
like
wants to
getting
go
LA
there.
people to
No,
like Hollywood.
yeah.
Like
Yeah,
it's, planned this in 3 days. I showed up at the venue on a Saturday, which was Times Square, and there was no sign. And I was like, oh crap, there's no sign. I dug that photo up. I found a mutual friend. I messaged her and I messaged him. And I was like, I'm organizing this event tomorrow from 3 to 5. And I would really appreciate it if you could light up Times Square with Stop Asian Hate.
Wow.
On a Saturday at 6 p.m.
For a rally the next day?
For a rally the next day on Easter Sunday.
Wow.
On Easter Sunday.
On Easter Sunday. So I the next day I have a photo shoot, which just so happened to be in Times Square. So I pushed the rally to 3 p.m., which I usually do at 1. And I show up at the event. Well, when I was at my modeling thing, I got a text from this guy who I've never met. I still never met. we got Times Square lighting up Stop Asian Hate for You from 3 to 5. Like, I'm like, if that's not like a higher power, like.
Because you just asked and they told you it was from 3 to 5 p.m. You didn't say,
No,
hey,
I told them 3 to 5.
Oh, okay.
I asked them and I was like, we're here from 3 to 5.
Okay, cool.
It would be great.
Yeah.
And he messaged me the next day, we got it, 3 to 5. I'm like, how do you get that? Like, how do you, like, that's millions of dollars of
Right.
ad spend.
Is it really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, a billboard in Times Square?
Not just one billboard,
All of it.
All of them?
like all the major ones.
Holy shit.
You know, like for that
That's
long.
crazy.
And so that was like, wow, there's a higher power. And I showed up at the site at 2:30, and there was like 100 people there, but they weren't my people. So it's like, who are these people? And they're Christians, and they were there singing for Jesus for Easter. And I'm like, oh my God, there's gonna be this huge conflict because I'm gonna bring all these people here, and there's all these Christians. So I spoke to the woman, and she was like, we do this every year, and we're done at 3 p.m. And I was like, oh, thank God for my modeling job. So, you know, and then she stopped her whole thing. She was the organizer. She's like, I'm gonna pray for you. I didn't know what she said because I was just like thinking about all the logistics, but she prayed for me. And then 3 p.m. came, and I'm trying to rush these people out, and nobody shows up at my rally. And it's like, just like these,
Really?
like my volunteers, like 10 people. And I'm like, fuck, you know, like, well, they're here, these 10 people, they care, I got to give them everything, right? And then I'm just watching the time, I'm trying to delay it as much as possible so more people come. In 30 minutes, hundreds of people show up. And it was just this, we had speakers, we had events. And we did
At the
these
time, you were
talks.
just like,
Yeah,
oh my God,
100
this
yeah,
is a
at the
complete
time.
disaster.
Yeah, I was like, this is, because I'm here
There's
kicking
no one
these
there.
people out, and then like
Right.
10 people show up.
Right.
But thankfully,
You just got to roll with it, dude.
you
just
got to do.
roll
Well, I
with
was like, if these 10 people are here, that means they care, and I'm gonna give them everything I got.
Well, what are the alternatives? Are you gonna like crawl
go
in a
home.
ball and you know
Yeah.
start crying, or are you just gonna like go with it?
Yeah,
you know?
you go with it.
Yeah.
You go with it. So thankfully, hundreds of people came with signs, like,
Yeah.
all different types of people. And I was gonna walk up on 7th Avenue, not on Broadway, and these bikers that I've never met before, they came and they closed up all the streets on Broadway. And they're like, no, you're marching on Broadway. So we're marching on Broadway. Stop Asian Hate on the billboard. Easter Sunday. People are looking at us like, what the
This
hell?
is an absolute scene.
Yeah, it's a scene.
Oh, yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
scene. Rihanna's there, like, it's a scene.
On Easter Sunday.
On Easter Sunday.
Is Rihanna Asian?
No. But she was just she was a supporter. She just
Supporter.
pulled out, yeah.
Dude, I'd
I
be
love
there.
that.
Yeah, there was half the people
No,
weren't
it's just so
Asian.
random, it's
yeah,
hilarious,
it was random. But like, if I didn't do that rally, because she was the only A-list celebrity that wasn't Asian to come out to support the Asian.
What other A-list Asian celebrities were there?
There was not in that one, but like, you know, there's like Jeremy Lin. I don't know if he's A-list.
Lin Sanity, bro.
Yeah,
At
Simu.
the time, he
Oh,
was A-list.
in New York, he's
Yeah,
A-list.
but he
Well,
didn't
there was
come-
like a
he didn't
3-month
come.
period when he was A-list.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
100%.
He was on the time.
And he
yeah.
hated it. You listen
Yeah,
to it
he
now,
didn't
he
like it. He
hated
didn't
being in
like
the
it.
spotlight.
Yeah.
He has a really good documentary
Yep.
on HBO, by the way.
Yep.
It talks a little bit about the Asian hate stuff, but it was 37 minutes long, so it's worth watching.
That's digestible, yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, but what about Andrew Yang?
I met Andrew first time he announced that he was running for president at my friend's like rooftop. Very brief. I just like heard about a guy who's running for president. It's like his first time announcing it.
Can you give like a quick 30-second on who Andrew Yang is?
So
Because some
Andrew
people might
Yang
not know.
Ran for president in 2020, and he was one of the people on the debate stage, which is very difficult to get to because you need a certain amount of voters and a certain amount of raised funds from these voters. And he popularized UBI, which essentially happened during COVID.
Universal basic
Income, and he talked about AI, which is now very clear.
Yeah, he was prescient. He was probably too early.
Too early.
At the time, people were like, "This is utopian. This is fantastical."
Right.
You know, but
Yeah,
now it's like,
$1,000 a month for everyone.
Yeah.
Robots taking over jobs. No, but now it's like, well, he was the only president that won the Iowa youth vote and didn't win the presidency. He's the only candidate that won the Iowa youth vote. what that goes to show is like if he ran again like 20 years, 10 years from now, a lot of people who are voters would age out, and a lot of these new voters would probably vote for him.
Yeah, I do
That's
do
what it
believe
tells
in the
me.
in the 2028, 2032 election. Obviously, we're going to be in a completely different society from an AI standpoint, but
Yeah.
I do think that's going to be the first election where it's like legitimately younger generations, like
Yeah.
the finally like the Mitch McConnells and the Nancy Pelosi's and certainly the Joe Bidens of the world are kind of recycled at that point.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
have some youthful thinking in politics.
Yeah, it's important.
Yeah.
Because we got to catch up to technology, man. Like,
Yeah.
we don't have enough policies to understand AI. Like, we're
Yeah.
so far behind.
Dude, Joe Biden knows what an LLM is, don't you think?
That's funny.
But so you and Andrew, like you had
Yeah.
a business and a friendship that spawned as a result
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
him attending your rally.
Yeah, he came to my rally. He said no at the beginning, and he came. And he showed up, and I didn't even talk to him that time because I was just so busy. And he was like, "This rally felt like a rally from the presidential campaign." And then, it was just not even talking to me. He was
Right.
like, "Who is?"
But this is after he ran.
This was when he was going for mayor in New York.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and he was like, "Who is this guy?" And he found me, and he was like, "Let's hang out. Let's talk." He invited me over to his house. We became very friendly. I met his family. I'm super close with his family, and we still continue just supporting one another, seeing one another. Like he had a Mets game in New York. He had a box, and went to the box. My first time at a Mets game in like 30 years. During a Peter Diamandis conference, A360.
Yeah, we should talk about that.
Yeah, that was really cool. I was his plus one. And
You're Peter's plus
no,
one
I
or
was
Andrew's?
Andrew's plus one.
Okay.
Thank God, because I probably wouldn't be able to pay for that right now.
Oh, it's super expensive.
I don't
yeah.
know how much it is, but it's like 25K.
It's 5 figures, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, it's like 25K for a conference.
Yeah.
It's a business write-off, though.
For sure.
Yeah. And the quality of people that are attracted to
quality
that, they're
of-
like forward thinkers. Those are people like who are spending their life in the 2030s.
This guy who I met there, I don't remember I think his company was called like Sun Group. I was talking to him, and he was like, "Give me a second. I'm closing a deal to acquire Forbes right now."
It's insane.
Wow.
Peter Diamandis is a transhumanist,
Yeah.
longevity guy, biohacker, plugged in with like the Elon crowd.
Yeah.
And he has Abundance 360, which is all about like, we're entering a new frontier for humanity. Like we're going to have this biohacking revolution. There's this AI revolution. There's quantum. There's nuclear fusion. All these things are coming. And like, what are the implications of it? And let's actually have like a discourse about it.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Good. That was really good.
Solid summary.
No, but Peter's a great guy. He went
Yeah.
to MIT, engineer, like serial entrepreneur.
Yeah, he seems, and like I just saw him a few months ago, and he's like jacked. Like his biceps are like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I'm like, holy shit,
He's
Peter.
definitely a peptide guy.
Yeah, probably. He's like taking 70 supplements a day or something like
Yeah, he's
that.
like Ray Kurzweil too.
Yeah, yeah.
Like these guys are just like, I am not dying before the singularity. Like I don't know what I have to do, right?
Yeah, trying to extend their
Same
life.
with like
as long
Brian
as possible.
Johnson.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Brian Johnson doesn't look that great.
He gives me the heebie-jeebies
He's looking like a
little bit.
vampire these days.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
does. Well, he doesn't go out into the sun.
At all.
Yeah.
And he only eats like plant mush and like
Yeah.
can't work out, limited calories. Like these other guys like Peter, like they're
Yeah,
like,
they're
how am I
jacked.
enhancing my current life to where I can do everything? Like
Well,
let me
Brian
eat more.
Johnson's entire existence revolves around reducing the
Yeah.
probability that he dies,
Yeah.
right? Because like in 10 years, like we conquer mortality, and he's like, yeah, that was worth it because now I have eternity. I just had to live like a weirdo for a certain period of time. And by the way, he's also worth like $500 million from biotech, just like Vivek.
More,
And he's making
yeah.
a ton of money now. So like,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
feel too bad for the guy. And honestly, he doesn't give a fuck what we think about him either.
No.
So good for him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, yeah. I mean, look, he's pushing something forward, and I heard him speak recently, and he was like, sometimes you got to go to the dark side to bring shit to the light, and I was like,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Like I like that's what
That's
he's
like
doing.
his whole existence. Like he
Yeah.
talks about like when he started his company and then sold it, he was like in a very, very dark place
Yeah.
the other way. Like so unhealthy. And that's like what he had to do to like do that.
Yeah.
And then he went full 180 to get to and to start doing what he does now. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think he spends like $2 million a year on.
His body, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, like LeBron, all those guys do that
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
He
Yeah,
also
but like
said
LeBron and him are a little like
Yeah,
it's
of
totally different.
Well,
Like, this dude's
LeBron's it is different, but like LeBron's actually gotten his biological age tested, and it's like 15 years
Oh,
younger than
wow.
his like actual.
Yeah.
I don't know how you call
like
it.
He's like
that-
40.
That's the thing. Like LeBron's at practice playing a sport. Like Brian is getting like bone marrow
Well, he's
transfusion.
going like Costa
he-
Rica for those like
Yeah, he's-
experimental
yeah.
gene therapy,
Yeah, it's
stem cell
crazy,
stuff
yeah.
as well.
I did the stem cells in Costa
Did
Rica.
you?
Yeah.
yeah.
What else did you do in Costa Rica?
Ayahuasca.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you open to talking about that?
Sure.
Yeah,
I didn't know if you were going to.
I want to hear about that a lot because
Yeah,
obviously,
yeah.
like,
You're on the fence.
well, you know, I'm a recovering addict in AA,
yeah.
so like doing that would reset my sobriety date. But I'm
Totally different.
fascinated.
Did you know the
by
person
it.
who created AA?
Did it? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He's
Well,
by
done a
the
lot of
way-
psychedelics.
Yeah.
I just like don't
Yeah.
like that some of these substances are just arbitrarily labeled as drugs, right? It
Right.
like comes
Right,
with
it's
like
a
a
plant.
negative connotation.
It's a plant
It is
that's
a
a
plant
plant
that the
medicine.
government just says is a drug because they
Yeah.
want to control the masses.
Right.
Right.
And like first time I seen ayahuasca as this like black tea and I tasted it, it's like Chinese medicine. It tastes
Right.
like Chinese medicine. I'm like, oh,
Right.
I've had this before.
Right.
So everyone's grossed out by it, and I'm like, oh, okay, I kind of understand.
Normal. Yeah.
It's tea.
Give me another cup.
Yeah.
Can I have the pot? Here, give me the pot. So what,
Well,
start to
ayahuasca
finish,
is-
like did you
yeah.
specifically go to Costa Rica for that experience or
Yeah,
for
yeah.
the stem cell or both? You were like, I'm doing both when I'm there.
No, so I've done it. I do it once a year.
Oh, you
On
did?
average now since 2020.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And first time I did it, I went with Keith Ferrazzi, who wrote the book Never Eat Alone. He was the one who invited me. Before ayahuasca, I did peyote in
Oh,
a
wow.
ceremonial setting with the Navajo people, with the Dene people. We're in this teepee. I was the only Asian guy there.
Of
just
course.
like with these grandparents and their grandchildren all doing peyote together
Where was this?
in Joshua Tree.
Wow.
Yeah, so like I felt like I was like part of some like different world. Like these people who came in from Arizona, from North Dakota, they came all the way together to sit in Joshua Tree together, and this was like a family reunion for them.
Wow.
And I'm just there observing, like, wow. We had one bathroom break in 14 hours, and
Wow.
we couldn't leave the teepee.
Wow.
So
Couldn't leave the TV?
we
Why?
couldn't leave. We could, if there was an emergency, we could, but they didn't want the energy of that teepee to escape.
I see.
Or you bring in some new energy.
It was a legit, like,
Yeah,
full blown, how they've done it for thousands of years thing.
And same thing with ayahuasca, right?
Yeah.
Like I've done it in a more modern way, ayahuasca, like
We're in like a house in the hills with.
well, more like in Costa Rica, but
Well,
in
they
a
have those like
retreat center.
luxurious 5-star
Yeah,
resorts where
luxurious.
Yeah,
like there's
yeah,
like
yeah.
3 nurses for every person and
Yeah,
stuff
it's like
like
the Four
that.
Seasons of
Right.
ayahuasca,
It's a very calming atmosphere to be doing
Yeah.
such an intense psychedelic experience.
which I like, which I agree with,
Yeah.
because such a shock to your nervous system is already so hard to comprehend and sit with, and like now add on the additional layer of being in a jungle when most people have never been in a jungle, and like sleeping there, it's like
Yeah.
a whole nother shock to your nervous system. So you might as well choose one, and then like get into it eventually, do both of it eventually, but.
So kind of like baby step into it.
Yeah, because throwing you deep in the deep end, you're like so shocked you can't even understand what's happening.
Right.
You know, if you're doing ayahuasca in the jungle and you start hearing birds talk to you, and then you're like, wait,
You have
am I
like a
talking to
snake
bird?
slithering next
Yeah,
to you
like,
and some mosquitoes
Right.
landing on you.
You're freaking out.
It's like, is that
it's just
mosquito
too hard to
real or is that
comprehend.
not real?
Yeah, it's too hard to comprehend.
yeah.
And it's just such a shock. You might as well like take your time.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's the experience been? Because it's very like enlightening. I mean, there's a reason you probably do it like every year now.
Yeah, and I
Well,
bring
the actual
people-
experience too, like what is the trajectory of it after you consume it?
So beforehand, it's like a few weeks of a diet,
Yeah.
no meat, no drugs, no sex, no alcohol, just very pure.
Monk mode.
Again, like what we said in the beginning is like if you have a spirit coming into you, how do you want it to like be received, right? Like this is literally drinking this medicine that opens you up to, I think, a higher power. It's actually the first time I felt like I met God. Was my third day of my first retreat. Was like, wow,
Wow.
like, and I've been to Christian school. My parents were Buddhists. I go to church sometimes. Never felt like I met God. Third day of drinking ayahuasca, I feel like I'm talking to God, and I'm in a whole different world. I'm speaking to an entity that I've never heard or seen, but felt very familiar, like a parent, and it's telling me like, don't kill animals, like take care of the earth. And the third thing is like, there's a war coming, but you're okay right now. So
That's utterly terrifying.
yeah, that was. I was like, should I worry? What should I do?
Yeah.
Should I do anything? Like, don't worry right now. You're good. Like,
There's a war coming.
there's a war coming. And then I was like, okay, came out of it. But then here I am thinking like, well, no one's gonna believe me that I talked to God. Like, who do I sound like? Who do I think I am? I'm not like a. I've never like really talked. Anytime anyone said God in my presence, I've always shut down right
Yep.
away.
I
Because
mean, that's like prophet stuff.
yeah, I've just shut down. I'm like, I don't really.
Yeah, there is not. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, I've never seen that. I can't relate. I can't resonate. And then
Yeah.
here it is. I'm talking to it, and I'm like, okay, like if I'm gonna, share it with people, I got to be okay with people think I'm crazy. And I'm like, okay, I'm okay with it. And I've only had that experience twice. Like, it's not every time I go in, I have that experience. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible, man.
What has been what do you think? Well, obviously connecting with a power greater than yourself is a pretty big gift that it's given you. Has there been any other like awakening that you've had like from those experiences, maybe trauma you were able to work through or anything like that?
Yeah, this is a very tangible story that a lot of people can relate to. The first time I drank ayahuasca, I didn't realize I had this issue, this traumatic issue as a kid. So when I was 15, I tore my ACL. Basketball was my first love, and I also was dating someone who was my first love. And it was New Year's Eve when I had my surgery, and we were supposed to spend New Year's together. And she came at 11:30 p.m., and I was happy to see her, like stoked. And she told me she wasn't staying with me because there was another man downstairs, and they were going to go to a party together. So it ripped me up.
And
like,
you have an ACL tear, so you
and
can't
my
even...
leg is like lifted.
Hey, you
right?
literally
Like,
just got home from surgery.
I'm still at the hospital.
You're still at the hospital.
Yeah.
She did that at the
Damn.
hospital.
Yeah, it was
You just
brutal.
got like Bismarck'd just the front.
Cold-blooded.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
Damn.
Bro, it ripped. I was like in the hospital watching the ball drop on TV, just crying in the bed. Just like, at like one moment, I felt like two of my first loves left me at the same time.
Wow.
And I could never even speak about that because of how damaging it was. Like, that point in my life, I tried to commit suicide.
Wow.
Like, I came home with some pills and I just yanked it back. I didn't even call I had physical therapy. I'm like, I'm not going. Today's it.
Were they opioids for the pain?
They were,
or-
yeah.
Yeah, like Vicodin.
Yeah. I tried it twice, and each time I threw up, thank God.
Well, you're lucky you didn't enjoy
Yeah.
it thoroughly, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
You might not be sitting here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
see,
for
like,
sure.
I got injured around that age and got it and enjoyed it a lot.
I enjoyed it.
Right?
I did.
Yeah.
I railed
Oh,
it.
yeah.
I did all of it. And I had people come over and smoke weed and rail it.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I drank ayahuasca for the first time, and this experience I haven't really dealt with in a long time. I just blocked it somewhere in my body, unplanned. I show up as my current self in the hospital. I see myself as a 15-year-old boy laying on the hospital bed crying, and I go on the bed and I hold this boy and I'm crying with him for hours, and I healed that part of me. And I just didn't know that this part of me was weighing on me so much. And I forgave my ex, and then like the more I let go, the more I'm able to connect, right? And that's just what it does. AI exists. I still think, even with AI, as much as I know about tech, which is not that much, but is more than most people, that ayahuasca is smarter than AI for us.
Yeah, because it's like unlocking a
It
piece
di-
of the brain that.
It dissects you. It knows. It goes into you, and it's like, oh wow, like this is what you need.
Yep.
You don't even know what you need. Like, I didn't know that experience was so traumatic.
It was
for
so
me.
locked in and repressed, and like, but it was impacting you
Impacted
in
me.
presumably negative ways, right?
Yeah, oh, I have these back pains. And
Yeah.
just like,
Well, you have trust issues with other
Stress,
girls and
yep.
other relationships, and it's tough for you to commit because she
Right.
just eviscerated you, right?
destroyed me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like that moment, like that pain you're still carried. Like, how do you let go of pain? right? Because if you don't let go of those traumas, they're just carried with you. Like, how do you do it? Yeah, I've done therapy for a year straight from the best therapist in the world
Yep.
at Meta.
Yep.
How do you let go of pain? Like my preference is just to be conscious of it and jump into it and accept it.
For sure. And that's very good.
And to build that association in your mind that it's like I'm growing. Like
Yeah.
this hurts,
Yeah.
but I'm growing. And so
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I actually like it.
And then it goes all the way to your parents. Like last year when I did it, I didn't know that I had an issue with my dad, who, by the way, doesn't speak English, was not that great to my mom, had a lot of anger problems, and I never really could communicate with because my Chinese is shit and he doesn't speak English. I'm purging out his shame and guilt. And I did, like, how is that even possible? Like, how is that even possible? Like, I went into his body, I felt his shame and guilt, and here I am releasing it.
Would you say it's like a key, like ayahuasca is a key to the skeletons that reside in your closet? Like the skeletons in the closet, it's like unlocking this thing that you've shut off and you've forgotten about, right?
That and 100 million things smarter. Like, it's just...
Is there euphoria or is it
There
like
is.
purely
Well,
discomfort?
when you release so much and then you're like, oh, this is life. Right? This is life. This is now life.
Yeah, it's almost like a euphoria that like all these synthetic drugs that people take to feel euphoria. It's like a true euphoria that you can never get there.
It's the purest form
Yeah.
of... It allows you to be the purest form of you.
Yeah.
And then the other people are, at that moment, all their gates are down. So throughout our life, when we experience fear, when we experience trauma, we put these invisible armors around us that feel like, you know, like a shield. And every time we have a thought or a thing to say, it comes out of the filter of that shield that we created invisibly. And we don't know we're holding on to this shield. And all the time we're carrying it. And it's not bad, right? It protects us, it keeps us from danger. And then when we do these ceremonies, like intentionally at the right environment with the right guide, you learn what it's like to put all these shields down. And then you see people at that same frequency.
Right.
And it's not to say we don't put these shields back up, because sometimes you need those shields. But at least you know what the goal is.
Yeah, and like what it allows you to do is change the filter. And
Changes
what
the filter.
flows from that is more pure.
Exactly. Changing the filter is so important.
So on Friday, we were talking about spirituality, and I definitely subscribe more to Buddhism, Taoism, Taoism, more than any other religion, I'd say, but not entirely one, right? I'd say that's like a distribution for me, right? There's certain elements of different religions that form my religious worldview. But like you were talking about I guess the triumvirate of spirituality, which is what is it? Yeah.
Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism.
And there's tons of commonalities, but like how would you explain each of them, like comparing and contrasting them?
Confucianism is like the philosopher that shaped a lot of the Asian thinking,
Originating in China.
originating in China.
Like Confucius.
Confucius,
Right,
yeah.
yeah.
Like Confucius says,
Yeah.
right? Like Taoism has really no founder. It's the relationship with essentially nature and the way, which is like
The Way, capital W.
the way. It's like yeah.
Is Tao Te Ching Taoism?
Tao Te Ching, yeah.
Okay. That's Lao Tzu, right?
Yeah, it's Lao Tzu. But Lao Tzu, they didn't really know if it was a real person. Lao Tzu just means teacher in Chinese.
It's like Shakespeare too, right? Like, is it just a combination of different
Right.
thought in one individual that they
Right.
like? Yeah.
So Lao Tzu is like the main kind of ideal philosopher for that. And then there's Buddhism that is came from, well, Siddhartha was born in Nepal, which is in the Himalayas, and he was a prince.
Right.
And he
A
was
sheltered
He
prince.
was sheltered, and he was never exposed to real life until he left his kind of shelter. And when he did, he decided to leave his kingdom and go embark on like finding enlightenment. And when he did that, he found these followers, and these followers created this movement of Buddhism.
Didn't he live next to a tree for like a year or something like that?
He found enlightenment on a tree.
Right.
It was a tree. I think the tree still exists. It's still in India, I believe.
Oh, this isn't fictional. Like this.
No,
This is assumed
the
to be
tree
accurate.
exists,
Oh,
yeah.
interesting. I thought it was just like
Yeah. So
like
Lao
a
Tzu
mythology?
is, we don't know who he is. They know who Siddhartha is. They know where he was born. I've been to his birthplace. Yeah, I've been to like this place.
Wow.
Yeah, I went with a Tibetan Lama. We flew to this place called Lumbini, which, by the way, is like one of the shadiest, just undeveloped airports. There's like monkeys in the airport.
Wow.
Yeah, I was
Really?
like, yeah, so trippy. I was like, is this plane gonna like, is it functional?
Who's
The
flying the
runway
plane?
was
Yeah.
like,
Dirt runway.
Yeah, it was a little out there, but I got there and went to this place where he was born, and just thousands of people just there meditating, just like the whole time.
wow.
Yeah, it was really beautiful.
The Tao Te Ching, I would say, is like one of the hardest books I've ever read in my entire life. Just like the non-translated version, and like, admittedly, I did thereafter buy a copy where they have like people's interpretation of it, and that made me appreciate it a lot more. But I feel like I've had to go through that thing like three times to really kind of grasp
Yeah.
the full message.
Yeah, so Taoism, essentially, they created the yin yang sign. They understood like masculine, feminine, right? Like light and dark. They understood all these
Manic
things.
depressive.
Yeah. Oh, they understand opposites, right? And they understood meridians, right? The thing about acupuncture is still being used in China today as a form of medicine.
Yeah.
That was the only thing that was like extracted during the Cultural Revolution, was like, oh, we like acupuncture, but we don't like religion.
Oh, interesting. Do you want to get into
Yeah.
Chinese history, or do you
I
not want
don't-
to delve too
I
much
just
into
don't
that?
know too much about it to understand it that
Well,
much.
basically, the high level is 1948. There's a civil war between Mao Zedong and Chiang Kai-shek. Chiang Kai-shek ends up fleeing to Taiwan. That's the birthplace of Taiwan today.
Yeah.
But the whole reason why China still believes that Taiwan is a component of the broader Chinese state, just like Ukraine is for Russia, because there's that shared history together.
Right.
And then Mao Zedong comes to power thereafter, and then there's a cultural revolution as he's consolidating his power. And like, his way of consolidation was to get rid of all culture, because
cultures.
culture is an expression of freedom, right?
And like the mayors and the leaders of those cities back then were all martial artists.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, not all of them, but like
Right.
they're ran by the top dog, like, who was like owning the martial arts school.
Yeah.
Which was pretty funny. And
But then there's also like before the Cultural Revolution, there's the Great Leap Forward, which was one of the biggest disasters in the history of humanity, right? Because I don't know the specifics of it, but like, basically they were using their grain, and they were using that to acquire military equipment and other imports. But in the process, they were starving the population. I think something like 10 or 20 million people died during that fiasco.
Yeah, I don't know too much about that time in history. I didn't study it, but yeah.
I mean, I guess the remainder of Chinese history, while we're talking about it, is basically, Mao Zedong gets sick in the 70s, and then there's this diffusion of power, and there's like, like 3 different camps that are kind of vying for power, like Game of Thrones style, and then who's the guy in the 80s? Deng Xiaoping, who was the one that democratized.
He knows.
He was the one that opened China to capitalism. So that was like what evolved into socialism with Chinese characteristics, basically, or capitalism with Chinese characteristics. But that he was also the one that gave the green light for the Tiananmen Square crackdown as well. And then thereafter, like, you kind of have this thing resembling democracy, but you have the Chinese Communist Party. But then we have Xi Jinping now, who is the most authoritarian ruler that China has had since Mao Zedong. You kind of have this cultural revolution that's happening in China as well. But anyway, there's a little bit of a tangent on China, but it's a really interesting history.
Have you been in China? You lived
Yeah,
there?
I went to China once because my best friend,
This guy knows more about you.
my best friend studied Chinese, and he's pretty close to fluent. He
Oh, wow.
looks just like me, but we went there.
Oh, right, you told me about
We went to Hong Kong, and then we went to Shanghai and Beijing back in 2016. I probably wouldn't go there now because I feel like I'd be like a Brittany Griner. Like, you just have that risk of like getting abducted and used as a political pawn and accused of being a spy.
You can't like, it's,
If you look up Tiananmen Square in China, like, you're literally risking your life.
that was one of the reasons why a lot of people left. It was like Tiananmen Square, right? And they still talk about it.
It's just a different culture too. It's like the United States, the economic miracle that it is, because it celebrates individualism, power to the individual, whereas China is the collective.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Taiwan, so a lot of these martial artists left to Taiwan And when I went to Taiwan recently, actually with Andrew,
You went to Taiwan with Andrew Yang?
yeah,
Oh, that's super cool.
his first time back in
Wow.
Taiwan, as Andrew, because he ran for president and he became a person.
Was
a
he
friend.
born in Taiwan?
No, he was born in
Okay,
the States.
he was presumably first generation American,
Yeah.
like you.
Yeah, and we threw this massive party for him. It was sick. It was my first time there.
In Taipei?
Yeah.
Nice.
We showed up, had my suitcases, partied, and it was like a welcome home party for him. Like he got to like celebrate that at home, and his dad's there. I mean, by the way, this Andrew's like he's like a genius. This guy remembers. He meets like probably 20x amount of people that I do, and I already think I meet a lot of people. He remembers everyone's name, like, and how he met them.
It's like Bill Clinton.
Yeah, I'm just like, he doesn't do any drugs. He doesn't drink alcohol. Does nothing. He's just so like, oh yeah, I met you like here.
That's amazing.
Shocked.
Well, that's why he's a politician, right?
Yeah.
And like, I think you require a certain degree of charisma to get how far he did during the presidential debate. Because prior to that, I mean, he's not a no name, right? But like people don't know him.
Yeah,
It's interesting. People are like, why do people run for president? Well, because like you're able to kind of long form get your personal brand out, right?
Yeah.
And then you have a lot of success that comes from that.
For sure. You get a contract at these news stations, but he went against that, right? He was very set up in the Democratic Party, and then he was like, "No, I'm going to start the Forward Party," which just goes to show his character is like, he really doesn't care about those things.
He's a man of principle.
He's very much like a good man. But when I was in Taiwan, I was practicing with these dudes that knew all types of Wing Chun and Qigong and stuff, and they had their own version of ayahuasca.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, super illegal.
Did you dabble?
I wanted to, but I had to leave. And they're like, "Oh yeah, is that the thing with the?" And they're like, "Yeah, we have our own version of that." I was like,
Not to go too ominous, but like I think you had that experience during ayahuasca where some divine being was telling you that a war was forthcoming.
"Yeah,
I think if there's going to be a big one, it's going to be around Taiwan. And like basically the story there is like there's this AI revolution that I think people are probably starting to understand. And what is the picks and shovels of the AI revolution? It's the GPUs. Everyone hears NVIDIA, but there is no NVIDIA in the absence of TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor, which is like the crown jewel of the Taiwanese economy. And like, yes, China wants to annex Taiwan because they believe that it's a rightful part of the Chinese state, but there is that urgency around getting access to those critical raw materials of this AI revolution.
And I think they're building factories in Arizona. They're trying to do it.
They're trying to
Just in
diversify
case.
fast.
Yeah.
But we were talking about this though, right? Like if China were to attempt to take Taiwan, which they're absolutely trying to do, they've messaged it explicitly. They're actively training troops about a amphibious invasion of the island, right? But my view is like I don't think the United States would allow China to do that.
Here's the thing where it's interesting because when you go to Taipei and you talk to the locals and you're like, "Are you not worried? Are you going to leave?" They're like, "We've been in this situation for 20 years."
Right. They have a loud bark but no bite.
No, it's not that. It's just like
And they've been preparing for
well,
it.
it's either the press in the U.S. is lying to us and making it like a bigger deal than it is.
Bunch of war hawks, yeah.
Yeah, or like stimulating the economy, maybe driving up the whatever war stocks or whatever, right?
Yeah, the defense contractors.
Right, defense contracts, or their government is not or is disclosing something from them, and I don't know which it is, but
or more insidiously is the CCP preserving the element of surprise.
possibly,
Right.
But
And like they've been biding their time. That's the one thing with the Chinese that I'll give to them, among other things. I mean, very respectable people. But like they think long term because they've had a millennial long history, right? And so they're like, we're biding our time, we're building up our military, we're stealing trade secrets from the Americans and then replicating it and then building our own in-house companies, in-house versions of Google and Facebook.
TikTok.
Yeah.
And by the
TikTok,
way, talking about psychedelics, the first ever written mention of psychedelic mushrooms and marijuana, China.
Interesting.
And the most amount of patents on psychedelic mushrooms, China.
Interesting.
Wow.
Psilocybin.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine the Chinese Communist Party like psilocybin that much.
No, probably not.
Well,
but
because it encourages free thinking, right?
Yeah,
and it
but-
encourages like unplugging from the matrix, right? I mean,
sure.
you were open about ayahuasca. Like I don't know want to use the word avid, but like I regularly consume ketamine, and yes, I do it socially and recreationally, but I find far more medicinal value just like doing a little bit of it, and to your point, meditating, right? And like channeling positive energy, because ketamine is a disassociative by definition, but like you disassociate, and so like most of the time, like our entire existence, like we have this cup of cyclical thoughts, right? And like usually you reside in your brain, like within those thoughts, and like ketamine allows you to kind of step outside of it. Like that's what cognitive behavioral therapy does, right? Like you have these cyclical thoughts, and sometimes they're negative, right? And people get into these spirals, and then you have some professional saying, like, Rob, why are you thinking like that? That doesn't make any sense. And you kind of dissect it. And so like the next time you think negatively, you're like, oh, like I remember what my therapist said.
Like a rewire.
Yeah. And so like you do that enough, and then like it changes your entire perspective on life. But with ketamine, you could do that yourself.
Yeah.
And you kind of see the reality for the matrix that it is, right? And the intelligently designed simulation that it is.
Yeah.
And you can impact it.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how they're testing these patents, but they have a lot of people and a lot of research. They've been playing with these. I mean, plant medicine is a form of medicine. in China.
Ayurvedic, yeah.
Yeah, it's a form, like it's probably consumed by billions of people, right?
Yeah, and I think there's definitely a trend towards more Ayurvedic medicine. Ayurvedic is derived from India, but it's still kind of the same philosophy. And it's like that as an alternative to pharmaceuticals, right?
Sure.
And like there's just broader trend and aversion to big pharma in the United States. I mean, there's a whole other conversation, but the incentives in the United States are towards more volume and more procedures, and frankly, sicker Americans.
Yeah,
And like big pharma, the United States is only one of 2 countries in the world where you could advertise pharmaceutical drugs on TV.
Yeah. What's the second one?
I think it's Australia or New Zealand or something like that. Yeah.
Really
But like
small,
literally
I think.
from the beginning, I don't want to get into a vaccine discussion, but like you come out of the womb and you're getting vaccinated right away, and you're hooked on big pharma right away. And like you're sick, it's like, okay, take this drug, take this drug, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then take this drug because of the side effects from the drug before,
Right,
and
yeah.
then you
Right.
just
And
keep
you're
going
in the
down the
cycle.
list,
And
right?
it's all a racket, dude. Like even like opioids, for example, we were touching on that earlier, right?
I mean, listen, they've done a great job on the opiate thing, on the documentaries they made and put them out on Netflix and Hulu, and that is 100% like true, right? Like they were in corruption with the FDA and got things passed that there's no reason they should have been passed, or right? And it's like, why do people do that? For a paycheck down the road, or in the future, a guaranteed job? Hey, you're the head of the FDA. Let's get this through. Let's get the special treatment of this drug, and then you can you'll be whatever at Purdue Pharma for us and make $10 million, right? And like,
Ton of money.
yeah. And so it's unfortunate that my sister being sick, we saw this a lot because it was just constant one treatment, then go to another treatment, then go to another treatment. And Eastern medicine like saved her life. That's why she's an acupuncturist.
Oh, wow.
Because she had this experience and she's like, this is what like healed me. Western medicine did not.
Yeah.
So this is what I believe in.
Dude, it's just like this, it's this like really disgusting thing in the United States. Our healthcare system is broken, but basically a big pharma company, yes, they come out with some like legitimately innovative thing that helps people and their health, but then they have a monopoly on it because they have a patent. They jack the prices.
Right.
And then they have the CMS, which is like Medicaid and Medicare, pay for it. And like that is our tax dollars that are going into this, right?
Yeah.
And so like my money in the state of California, Uncle Newsom, Uncle Sam, is going into the pockets of some big pharma executive, right? And it's like I could understand why people, like even like the RFK movement, and to some extent the Trump movement, is around, we have these industrial complexes in the United States, right? You have the military industrial complex where there's an incentive towards more wars and having the CIA start wars internationally because it benefits Lockheed Martin. And they just have this revolving door of generals that go onto the boards of these companies, right? Same thing with Big Pharma, Scott Gottlieb. That guy is brilliant. He was the FDA commissioner under Donald Trump. He now is on the board of Pfizer, right? And like, what kind of influence do you think he has within the government that's in Pfizer's favor? These industrial complexes are in cahoots with the regulators. They are regulating themselves. And it's called regulatory capture. Like Bill Gurley talks about this, who's a famous venture capitalist. But even beyond that, like there's big food and big agriculture. You have the
Energy,
cigarette. Yeah, you have the cigarette
tobacco,
companies.
yeah.
You have big tobacco from the 70s and 80s that saw the writing on the wall, right? There's going to be regulation against cigarettes. They're not actually healthy, and
matter
pregnant
what
women
we
should be
say.
smoking these. Well, guess what they do? They buy food companies.
Yeah.
The big cigarette companies buy food companies because they're like, we need something that Americans are consuming on a daily basis, and we can't tout cigarettes anymore because the Surgeon General is going to say you can't use it anymore. You buy big food and you make it addictive. They don't want to make people sick. They don't want to give them cancer, but their incentive is towards more addictive food and cheaper food.
And more consumption,
Right.
right? And I would even argue, looking at some of the food, I would even argue it's more detrimental to your health than a cigarette. Like, it's insane,
It's
some of this
disgusting.
stuff, right? So,
You open a bag of chips in Europe compared to in the U.S. Like, I could eat a whole bag of chips in the U.S. and I will still be hungry.
Yep.
In Europe, I'm like, this is all right. This is cool.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm full. I'll put it away.
It's interesting too because I was in Argentina for 5 months during my digital nomad journeys.
Yeah.
I want to talk about your travel experiences and get back to like what you're doing now.
Yeah.
But I felt so good there, dude, because all the food is like not sprayed with these
Organic.
herbicides and pesticides. Organic is actually cheaper, right?
and it's
Instead of,
actually
like,
real.
Instead of the opposite.
Here, it's not even real anymore.
And then you come back to the United States and it's like, this food is so shitty.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's
like
tough.
in Europe, right? Like, people that can't eat bread here go to like Italy and they can eat all the bread they want.
That was dog
right?
bread there.
Yeah.
It's like
And
the
they're
high
totally fine.
fructose, sugar,
Yeah.
sodium, and like whatever else they're putting in. Like they have literally like all of these academics and scientists, and their entire job is to how can we make people not full when they eat this food? How can we make it more addictive?
Like, what other country do they need GLP-1s for like half the population?
Well, that's the thing, right? It's like, oh, don't exercise, don't eat healthy, just take this shot of
Dude, the magic
Ozempic.
bullet, and that's all what America is about, is where is the quick fix, where's the silver bullet,
Yeah.
what's the X factor? I don't have to train, I don't have to do anything, I don't have to eat right, I just take Ozempic, and I'll eat one bag of chips instead of 10,
Well,
right?
the common
Like,
trope is that technology makes us lazier, right? And like
100%.
GLP-1s, peptides are a technology. It just happens to be a biotechnology.
Without a doubt.
Right? But like I am definitely pro GLP-1 semaglutides because one, you have it's combating the obesity epidemic
Totally.
for sure. 2/3 of Americans are obese,
Diabetes,
overweight.
yeah.
But then it's also just craving suppression in general, right? If you have any addiction, like people are not biting their nails as much, they're not hitting their vape as much. If you're a sex addict, like if you're a heroin addict.
It's like technology that helps us cope with the other technology that is like distracting us and taking all of our attention.
It's like almost equalizing,
Yeah.
right? It's like, okay, this one technology comes in, so we have to bring this biotechnology to come like equalize it out, because it's not like pushing this way over, so this side is like victorious. It's just like, how do we like get equilibrium so like nobody's totally overweight? But again, like the peptides, even just on that health point for obesity, like you look at all the healthcare costs, and this is why our healthcare system is so jacked up, like diabetes, any disease or ailment that comes from being overweight, like those will eviscerate all of that, right? So that will no longer be a drain on the healthcare system where it once was. Like, that's an incredible benefit.
But I think you have to have the choice of like, do I look pessimistically at these things or optimistically? It's like obesity. Yeah, that sucks. But like, what does that mean? It's caloric excess. And by the way, it's a lot better than starvation. That was a feature of most of human history.
Well, it's like that. Obesity is a rich man's ailment,
Right.
Right. Like you had to be like gout.
Gout.
Right.
Yeah.
Like because your diet was so high in sodium.
And steak and alcohol.
Yeah, red meat, right?
Technology
Yeah.
creates issues that technology alleviates.
Totally. Yeah, totally. So, like Rob said, let's get to where you're at now, and all your travel and kind of what that did, but then like what you're doing now also.
Yeah. When I was traveling, I was going on all these adventures of seeing different temples, doing different meditation retreats. Like I spent 6 days in the dark. Complete
Silent
darkness,
meditation?
Silent in the dark with like.
Fasted meditation too?
No, they give us like watermelon and eggs and stuff, like very
Like
little.
in the dark, like a cave.
Dark
Like,
room. It was like a
Okay.
dark room, completely dark. Like
you had like no ambient light, like you couldn't see anything.
For
Nothing.
6 days straight?
6 days straight.
Like,
Did
you're in
your
like solitary
eyesight-
confinement.
Almost, but you have a nice room, like you have a bed, like
Did you start to develop like night vision? Like you were able to see like in the dark, or it was like that dark?
it was too dark.
Well, that happens
Yeah.
even if you are like
No, it's true.
Does that
at
actually
night and
happen?
turn the lights off and
like
just sit there for like
cats.
5 minutes. Your eyes adjust and you
Your
can
eyes
see
adjust.
way better.
I thought it would.
You like turn into
and it,
X-Men.
it was just too dark.
Yeah,
it was just too dark.
It was
Yeah.
too dark. Yeah, I thought I was like super advanced meditator. It was like brutal. It's like going on a marathon, right? Like you're just like straight up meditating for 6 days in the dark. And the idea of it, like scientifically, is serotonin produces when there's daylight and melatonin when it's darkness, right?
Right.
And with compounded melatonin, there is some sort of like DMT effect. Yeah.
Interesting. And did you notice that?
Very slightly.
Okay.
But it was more of like a marathon. I felt like very fulfilled when I completed it.
But it was-
like, it was fucking torture for me.
It was.
It was not easy.
Yeah.
It was just a little bit of I'm in Thailand. It's like the best food in the world, and they're giving me like a few pieces of nuts and like some watermelon, and I'm like, I need more food.
I'm sure it was tough right away, but then like your body got adjusted to it, right? And like the internal chatter like starts to cease, right?
Yeah.
And like I forget who the quote is. Like I was just reading Naval Ravikant last night, and
great book.
enlightenment is the space between your thoughts, right? And so like by going into such a lengthy meditation like that, the space between your thoughts elongate, right? So
Yeah.
you're taking a decisive step towards enlightenment, right?
Yeah.
In that moment, but then it's up to you after that meditation retreat to build that practice into your daily life,
Right.
so you could perpetuate like how like that experience, right?
Yeah, it's like the stock market. Sometimes you just got to go like really up there and then come back and level out and still have this growth. But like sometimes you just need that time to.
You're increasing your baseline,
Your
though,
baseline.
right? Like you hit that peak and then you get to the trough, but then
Right.
it's like the stock market, like up and down, but like the trajectory is up
Always
over time,
up,
right?
Yeah. Always up.
If you
long
zoom
term.
out long enough, if
Yeah.
you zoom out enough, yeah.
Like every single meditation, every single week, every single ayahuasca, it's like helping me get to more of who I am.
Yeah.
How do you make meditation a priority in your life? Because everyone is like, you know, I don't have time to meditate, right?
Yeah, I wake up and it's the first thing I do before I look at my phone. And
Good for you.
my
Nice.
therapist told me, she was like, because when I did in the beginning, I didn't get it, right? I'm like, I'm thinking, having these thoughts, I don't understand. She was like, imagine it like reps at the gym. And like
Muscle
every
memory.
time you have another thought, you come back to your I'm here, I'm meditating, I'm not supposed to be thinking about anything. Oh, I have to do this. Wait, let me come back. And what that does for your actual life for productivity is like if I'm trying to focus on work and all these things are beeping and I'm getting these notifications, I'm like, and that's training.
Kindly return to your
Yeah.
baseline,
It's
right?
like,
It's like,
oh yeah,
that's
boom.
not wrong. That's just a thought. This is normal. It's human. But let me bring it back to the present moment. It's like it increases your ability to focus, right?
right.
And but then also it's like I have this daily adversity, right? Like someone is an asshole to me, or someone
Yeah.
cuts in front of me in line, or anything like that, and you're like conscious, right?
Yeah, it's coming back to normal state. And
Mindfulness.
yeah, the example that I give was like, look, when my mom had surgery 7 years ago, I was angry. I couldn't let it go. And now, when I went to New York in April, this guy ended up like pushing me really hard, and then pushing me again, expecting like I thought I was gonna have to fight him, and then I was like, oh shit, I gotta fight him. So I picked up my hand, and I was like, am I gonna punch this guy? And then they grabbed him, and he started apologizing, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm okay. I just let it go. Whereas before, I was like, no. I would just go all out. It would be like the whole night would be ruined. Everyone else would be impacted, and it was like because of whatever I needed to prove. But now it's like, oh, this happened, I can drop it like that, and that's a superpower.
Yeah. I mean, meditation just reduces the amount of time you're sleepwalking through life.
Yeah.
Mindfulness is the opposite of sleepwalking,
that.
right?
Yeah, it's one thing I look for in like my friends and my partners in business and in love is like, how quick are they able to emotionally regulate? Because if they hold a grudge and they are frustrated for a long period of time, it's like, okay, when are you going to be okay again to like operate?
Yeah, and like, how much of your daily action is you being a slave to your emotions and your impulses and your ego, or like allows you to take a step back and
That's right.
actually like impact things consciously.
That's
You
right.
know, and like I'm not perfect with meditation. I've been on and off with it for like 10 or 12 years, but like,
Perfect. That's
yeah,
perfect.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
You learn a lot about yourself
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
process. You learn a lot about yourself, right? Because who you are is in some ways, it's not your physical body, it's your internal thoughts, right? And if you like are conscious of that internal dialogue, you learn a lot about who you are as a person.
For sure.
And I think learning about who you are as a person is never a bad thing.
Yeah, like why do we do these actions, or why do we take on these jobs? Like in the past, it was like, why am I starting this business? And it was like clearly to make money. And it was like, why was I trying to make money? It's like I was making money so that I could feel more worth. And like, why do I not feel worth? It's because like all these people told me I was unworthy. And then it was like, well, is that the truth? And then getting to the truth and like knowing that all these people probably felt that way. And it's really hard when we do this meditation so we can get really clear with who we are, and then we create from that place instead of the place of like the pain and the shit and the trauma.
Yeah.
That's really hard to do.
So you're talking about in the past how you had an unhealthy relationship with money, and like I was certainly that too. Like I've talked about in the podcast before, where I came from like an investment banking Wall Street path, and like everything revolves around money, and like everyone defines their own self-worth by the amount of money they have in the bank account. Yeah. And it's like, why am I doing these things? It's like that quote. It's like to impress people I don't care about, right? But for me at this point, it's like freedom, right? Like I don't care about the money I have in the bank account. But like with you, I think you came to that realization a couple of years ago, and you've taken a step back from business, right?
Yeah.
And you're kind of reevaluating making an entry back in.
Yeah, it was very challenging. Well, I'm thankful that I was able to save up enough and then like live very minimally, and I love doing that. It's like a skill, and just reevaluate like why I'm doing the thing, and if it's not aligned with who I am, then I don't do it. And what I've learned recently, like saying no to a lot of things and saying yes to what really matters. And there's a lot of opportunities, and I keep on saying no to it, and I keep on saying no to it, even when it's difficult, even when it's like, oh, that's like a nice chunk of change. So sometimes I'll say yes, right? Like, I'm not stupid.
It's opportunity cost,
yeah,
right?
it's opportunity cost.
Yeah.
And then like when the right opportunities come, like me visiting Bhutan and meeting the prime minister there and meeting the king, and they're launching a mindfulness city with the expectation of creating a new city with Buddhist economic and happiness values.
That's cool. Like spiritual capitalism.
Yeah, purpose capitalism,
Yeah.
right? Like it's what it is, right?
Yeah.
And they want to 4x their GDP in the next 10 years.
That's ambitious, dude.
It's possible.
That's a fast Kager.
It's fast. It's difficult, but you know what? The benefit here is this country has been pretty much closed off forever, and now they're opening their doors.
Good for them.
To the right people, right? To the people who can make a difference, who align with their values, and building from there.
Dormant entrepreneurship, right? That's ready to kind of come out.
Yeah, so I think that's a huge potential. So like, oh, that happens. Let me step into that role of like organizing and using these skills that I've learned and developing and bringing people there. And you know, if I was working on something else, I couldn't have done this.
Yeah. So like, tell us about the upcoming event.
Yeah. So it's called the Bhutan Innovation Forum. It is.
And Bhutan is near Tibet.
Bhutan is in the Himalayas. It's near Tibet. It's near Kathmandu, Nepal, and they didn't open their doors to foreigners until like 1970s, and even then they have very strict visa requirements where you would have to fill out an application form, like an actual essay type thing, and you would have to pay $200 a day.
They wouldn't let you in the teepee.
Well,
Just to like step foot in the
just
country,
step foot.
200 a day.
200 a day,
Yeah.
which like people
USD.
Are like, USD.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which like if you're like a regular person, even as an American from a Western society, that's still a lot, right? So like,
It's basically like, don't come to our country unless you really want to be there.
yeah. Well, their
Which
reasoning-
was that like purposeful, the way they did that.
Yeah.
So
It's a
it was like,
filtration process,
hey, we're
yeah.
opening the doors,
Right.
but we really don't want anybody to be coming here.
Yeah, because they one, a beautiful thing about Bhutan is like their culture is still preserved from thousands of years ago.
Yep.
Where if you go to like, I don't know, Europe or something, you don't really
Anywhere.
feel that as much,
Yeah.
right?
Well, the United States is 250 years old, right?
Right, and like
It's like a baby culture.
Yeah,
it's a
but
baby.
most foreign countries that have thousands of years of history,
You don't
their
feel
cultures are
destroyed by war.
Well, yeah,
Exactly,
you have like
yeah.
Paris with the architecture, right? But like these Asian societies
Yeah.
have been around for a very
Or
long
even
time.
like
yeah.
South Asian, like Middle East, like they had some really beautiful culture, right? And it's like, where is that underneath all the, shit from?
It's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
But Bhutan has it, and
Yep.
it's these temples, they preserved it, like it's still there. They do their best not to kill animals.
Yep.
So until COVID, they
Are you vegan?
no, I was. I
You were
tried.
previously?
I got too
tried.
skinny.
You can't be that jacked while being a vegan.
It's
dude.
difficult.
Well,
Well,
it
they
is
say
possible.
too-
There's those vegan bodybuilders, but it's like
I've seen them.
so
Yeah.
hard, dude.
Well, vegan and plant-based are two different things
Yeah, that's
also.
true.
So
Is that right?
yeah.
Yeah.
What?
There's very vegan, vegetarian, plant-based. Like there's so many
What's the difference?
differences
What's
in
the
the diet.
I don't do red
So
meat that often.
plant-based, you're allowed to eat. No, plant-based, you're not. Vegan, I think it's something to do with dairies. Like plant-based,
Well,
I'm pretty.
plant-based is just no meat, and vegan is just nothing derived from animals. So it's a little bit. Veganism is a little bit more intense than plant-based.
And what's vegetarian? Vegetarian is like you
Very
should.
That's-
Vegetarian is plant-based.
Vegetarian.
I
is
think those are
plant-based. I think
synonymous.
that-
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
true.
We're
I
gonna
own
look
the
this up.
Instagram account plant-based, by the way.
Get out
You
of here.
do?
Yeah.
How many followers does it have?
48,000.
That's it?
Do you
Yeah.
monetize
Dude,
it at all?
let's blow that thing up.
Yeah,
Plant-based?
I've been looking at, I've been looking into it, and I just started posting on
You
it.
could probably sell that for 6 figures too.
Easy.
Yeah, I'm trying to grow it. I'm trying to
Yeah,
grow it.
vegetarians do eat some animal products. Vegans do not eat animal products.
Yeah, because like some vegans don't do like beef.
Like a vegetarian would drink milk,
Yeah.
but a vegan would not drink milk.
Or eggs.
Yeah.
I think you're allowed to eat
Vegetarians, dairy and eggs,
vegetarian eggs.
right? Vegan is zilcho.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
Also,
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
but
so you have the purpose capitalism, which I think people are kind of talking about like AI and like what is the next step in the evolution of capitalism, because clearly our current version is like not doing too well. It's having some negative externalities. So maybe the purpose-driven capitalism is the next step there.
Yeah, I like it. I feel like I resonate most with people who care about other people, care about the improvement of humanity.
The social
and
bottom
world.
line.
Yeah, some sort of social element.
It's like
Yeah.
a better version of like the DEI and stuff like that that's in the United States that has gotten
Yeah.
corrupted. It's like
well, the
wh-
DEI was
making
the most
money
woke system ever.
Like
Yeah.
making money and doing good are not incompatible, but you have to have the right framework in place.
No, if you look at most companies that are making tons of money, is they are benefiting humanity in some way,
For
right?
sure.
And the more founders, like that company First Form, right? The supplement company with Andy Frisella,
Yeah.
like he's basically become a billionaire starting it bootstrapped in St. Louis, Missouri.
Wow.
Just because his main focus was how can we change as many lives as possible, right? It's like if you look at Nike, like what are they actually selling to people? They're selling things that allow you to go like work out more and be healthier, right? So I think like that in most of capitalism, right? The reason Apple does what they do is like they make our life better because they put a supercomputer in our hand,
Yeah.
right? So I think like capitalism is, hey, we're benefiting outside of big pharma, right? So
Well, you
there's
just have to
those
have some
evil
checks
actors.
and balances, dude.
Yeah.
You have to have some
100%,
checks and It can't be
100%.
like complete lack of government. Like despite being a libertarian, I think you have to have some stuff in place. But
Yeah.
the current issue with our society is that like we have these regulations from like 1924 that are
Yeah,
still
they
in
don't
effect
fit.
now.
They don't
right?
fit.
Yeah, and like there should be an
Yeah.
expiration date to regulations, and like that's why I do like the idea of like Elon Musk coming in with a Doge Department of Government Efficiency, right?
Yeah.
And he's just going to come in and completely get rid of the federal
Yeah.
bureaucracy and cut all the red tape, kind of similar to how he treats his companies.
Yeah.
It's like if Elon Musk is involved with our government, like I become more optimistic about this
Oh,
country.
For sure.
For sure. Like again, it's like why aren't we having all the best private business people or public?
Right. That's what Andrew Yang said. He's
Yeah.
like, entrepreneurs should run our country.
Well, that's the
not
political
politicians.
system in Singapore, right? Where
Yeah.
like how do you attract people, like business people, competent individuals to government?
Yeah.
You pay them consistent
them
with what you can make in the private sector.
Or you have something else that benefits, right? Because
Yeah.
then all right, that's more expenditure on the government system, but hey, now your company, right, like whatever tax benefits your whole company can get off of
also,
it, right?
like scholarships, right? They fund
Yeah.
they fund really talented people to go to school in the West or wherever.
And then come back and work in
and now
government.
you come back and work for a government.
Like the military. Hey, we're going to pay for college, but you owe us 4 years after you're done. Right? So, yeah, I mean, I think that's
So
good.
what do you hope to accomplish with this Bhutan conference, and who are the attendees that you're willing to mention?
So, Bhutan, I'm trying to create a movement around mindfulness and economics, right?
Love
like,
that.
If people are attracted to a country like this, and we could kind of change culture by saying like, hey, you can do business and you can practice these values, and it's cool because Evan Spiegel is there and Joe Stiglitz is there and former Prime Minister of Colombia is there, and you care about capitalism, like, hey, maybe you can adopt some of these values. And there's way more people than just that, right? It's like, look how many people are interested in this topic of mindfulness city, right? And like these speakers, we didn't pay them. Like, you know,
They're just coming to do it because they want to.
Yeah, like Evan Spiegel's
believe
flying
in
his jet, like, you know,
Wow.
with a posse of people, and they're announcing a new product launch in Bhutan.
Right.
So it's like,
Wow.
you know, it's like, wow, these people care, right? Like, we celebrate these people, and if they're involved in like changing culture, it's like, we got to chill out a little bit. We should be practicing meditation. We should.
And if that's a successful experiment, it's one that could be exported to other countries as well.
That's right.
And that's getting into starting a movement, right?
That's
And that
the
might be a
case
good segue into like the last chapter of this conversation, which is like, so you started working at Instagram relatively early, and you were on Instagram pretty early. You've developed this personal brand. You're at just about 50,000 followers. And how are you thinking about growing your personal brand? What is kind of the main theme and things that you stand for? And I guess last question, like, how do you plan to monetize that in a way that allows you to make money, but also positively impact people?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this for like 2 years now. And the way I started creating content was, one, it was like the reason I didn't create content was I felt like the content I was going to create was about me. And it is still about me, but I'm trying to make my ideas go viral instead of me go viral. I went to a friend's funeral, and they played these like clips of him in like 2016, and I was just like, that can't happen. Like, if the last event that I go to, or the last event that is about me and all my friends come to it, they better play some more updated content. Like, right. So I was like, okay, that's a good reason. I just got to create content from a place of like,
for my funeral,
how am I going to be remembered? You know,
your
like,
legacy.
Legacy.
like, yeah, there, like, it is legacy, and it's like, well, I don't care necessarily about like being remembered forever. Like, my version of legacy is like, I just want the people that I met to have had a better experience because they met me, and then that's it. I don't need to be written on a textbook. I don't care about any of that.
Well, that is the legacy, what you just said, right?
The Liang Institute of Spirituality.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't matter.
City of Liang in Bhutan, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're looking for. No.
Yeah, well, end of the day, if you think about like how many people's name you actually remembered from 1,000 years ago, it's probably less than 10, right? And it's like, the truth is, I'm probably not going to be one of those people.
Yeah, 3 generations and you're whitewashed. You're just
Completely.
into the abyss, never to return again.
Yeah, completely. So I've been creating content for that. It's also a creative outlet. But if I wanted to do another thing like the Stop Asian Hate movement, I want to be able to be prepared for that situation, right? Like, if there is another thing that I want to promote, like Bhutan, I want to have the audience there already. I don't want to be like, let me create the audience and then promote Bhutan.
The skill of organizing people, I think, is going to be extremely valuable for you in the post-AI era as well, because all of the digital things that we're consuming, most of it's going to be AI generated, right? And so like, there's going to be a value and a premium placed on in-person experiences where you bring people together.
And that's where I doubled down, because I was in tech a lot, and I realized that my skills in tech is going to be gone in the next year. Like,
It's going to be a commodity. Everyone's going to have access to it. That's what a commodity is.
Yep. And I figured, like, let me go double down in the skill of creating experiences for people, because that's just what I like to do in general.
And that's not something that's easy to replicate.
No.
And humans need it.
Humans need it, and they're going to yearn for it even more.
Even more.
So I'm trying to do something like AI can't replace. Right? Community, going deep, being vulnerable.
You saw it during COVID too, right? Like, everyone's locked into their apartment. There's just like depression and mental health
No,
issues.
yeah.
And it's like, we're social creatures. We want to be
Yeah.
together in person.
Right.
So how do you plan to like monetize that, I guess, from like a business standpoint?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this for a long time. So I only say yes to projects that align with personal development and can use my skills in organizing and bringing the people together. And eventually it'll be some sort of community around creating movements, right? And how people can create those movements. And if my mission now is to help people create the movements around the ideas that they have, like Sovereign Entrepreneur or whatever drink that they have, where they want to create a movement of people who support them, then this is the place where they can learn those tools, where they can get the support, the feedback, the organic growth, all in one place. And I haven't figured out how that looks like yet, but this is just something that I've been thinking about in the last 3 months.
I mean, speaking on behalf of Sovereign Entrepreneur, like we'd be happy to be one of your test subjects.
Yeah,
so
man.
you say
Would
the
love
word,
that.
let us know.
Yeah. It's like I learned these skills of promoting club parties, how to create a flyer, and then getting pressed to it, to now coaching people at Meta on how they should be running their ads, what ads are most effective for them, which, by the way, I'll share it right now, it's running ads towards the event. That is the lowest CPM product that you can run currently.
Interesting. As opposed to
As opposed to promote button, as opposed to carousel.
Instagram follow.
Reels,
Follow,
anything.
Just come to this event in
Here's
person.
why.
Interesting.
Here's why. Because corporate companies are not running ads towards events.
Right.
And that team, the events team, is always trying to optimize for people to run ads towards them, so that the few people that do get a substantial amount of reward.
Yeah. And that gets my mind thinking, like, you know, what is Sovereign Entrepreneur likely to evolve into? Like right now, just a hobbyist project of having, you know, Joe Rogan-esque conversations
Yeah.
with people in LA and then
Which
beyond.
is a start.
But there's no reason why we can't start throwing events,
No.
right? And there's no reason why we can't start doing like mastermind groups or like, you know, VIP trips
Right.
around the
Yeah.
world and stuff like that.
Create a movement of sovereign entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Yep.
And just like low pressure, like let's just have conversations.
Super low pressure.
Let's see where
Yeah.
it goes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I met this guy 2 weeks ago he was a student at Yale, and the first thing he did was just bring together like 75 of the smartest people he knew. He barely had a plan. He was just like, I'm just gonna bring you guys together, but if there's a deal that comes by me, I get to run it by you. And the benefit of being together is, so if you need anything, I can connect you with these 75 people. And that's what he did. And now he's like created a $150 million fund. He has a nonprofit that does that donates $40 million a year. He's like 29. I'm like, wow, haven't been impressed with.
Well, that makes me think about the architecture of the Apple headquarters in NorCal, in the San Francisco Bay Area, and like they designed it in like a circular fashion in a way where it encourages spontaneous experiences with people, where like two people collide and like something beautiful kind of results as a, you know.
Spontaneity is
Yeah.
highly undervalued. So if you could create spontaneity, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've been looking at that and finding the right people to have as partners, as channel partners that I want to develop, that are seeking this. So yeah, we'll probably be more developed after Bhutan. Bhutan is right now my focus, and yeah, we'll see what happens.
That's
Where do
awesome.
you, I guess like final question from my end, like where do you see yourself in 5 years?
So I see myself working with people and governments that want to contribute to society, contribute to a better world, and using my expertise to coach them, to work with them, to guide them, whatever it is, into creating a world that I would like to live in.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Anything from you, Danny?
No, man, that's it. Really appreciate your
Yeah.
time today. Thanks so much for
Likewise,
coming
man.
on. For the
fun.
people out there, where can they find you? Social media?
Yeah, just my name is Jack Liang. It's all it is right now. Hopefully it'll increase to YouTube.
If you go to
TikTok.
his Instagram and you just watch 10
Yeah,
videos,
it's like
you will
it's
be a better
incredible.
person, I promise.
thank
you.
Just
Yeah,
spend
it's
10 minutes.
incredible.
Spend 10 minutes.
Excited,
Good content.
excited for the future for you. So, with that, guys, there's another episode of Sovereign Entrepreneur. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Peace.
Peace.